I hereby convene Westchester Township Trustee meeting, October 22nd, 2013. Roll call.
Mr. Wong?
Here.
Mrs. Stoker?
Here.
Mr. Lang?
Here.
Tonight, we want to invite our Westchester's own Nick Bolton of Troop 974. He's working on his Eagle Scout to come forward to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Nick? Please rise.
Join me in pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you. Okay, first order of meeting is citizens' comment. The first citizens' comment is limited to a total of 10 minutes.
2.
2 minutes each.
Okay, it's scared.
The first 5 individuals sign up will be given 2 minutes each to address the trustee. You jump in ahead.
Yeah.
I haven't read the statement
I
yet.
thought it was going to be a long meeting.
Okay. First person sign up is Mr. Stephen Clark. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Sure. Before I can begin my comments, I'd like to state that Westchester lost a wonderful member of the community this weekend. Jerry Bryan passed away Saturday. And I've known Jerry and Kathy since 1977, and they're on a very short list of people that I truly admire, and I'm going to miss Jerry very much. My name is Stephen Clark, 7392 St. Ives Place in Westchester, Ohio. We've gone over this a couple times with reference to businesses that provide goods or services to the township or have zoning issues before the township. Is it appropriate for a current township trustee to approach those businesses and solicit consulting positions when that trustee has no other relationship that is business other than township issues? We seem to have a problem coming up with the words conflict of interest, but that's what it is. Ms. Stoker, I've heard your comments. You've danced around the question and not really answered that one specifically. Mr. Wong, you've not said anything. Liberty tax. So the difference between a McDonald's uniform and a Statue of Liberty costume is so great, and the costume so offensive, that Westchester Township trustees are willing to spend tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars defending that position. A drunk gets beat in a bar, and we settle out of court because it's cost effective. I believe that's what we were told. But we are going all out on the concept that a costume is signage. Ms. Stoker, I know that you recently said that the opinion of the zoning office is supported by counsel. How does paid counsel's willingness to get paid to defend the township and its poor judgment make the persecution of this business the right thing to do? How many Supreme Court decisions are settled 5-4 to meaning on any given day 4 of the justices are considered to be wrong? How do you know our zoning office was right as opposed to just being stubborn? The truth is the zoning office on its own or at the behest of the trustees made a bad call, and now as bureaucracies are inclined to do it, must double down on bad judgment by defending itself at all costs. Costs and consequences, by the way, which will not be borne by the people responsible. I also noticed that you'll be approving a requisition tonight for $38,216 for Frost, Brown, and Todd for legal services for the month of August, or how much of that is going to be based on defending this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
So Chip Des Moines. 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Chip Des Moines. I live at 5906 Hazeltine Court here in Westchester. I'm not one of these guys that comes to very many of these meetings. I think I've been here, and I've lived here 25 years. I've probably been to a dozen of these daggone things, and primarily due to efforts within the Westchester 2025 Vision Committee that long ago. I'm here tonight because you guys kind of inspired me to be here. I came to you because of an issue that I personally have had with the local police, and I felt that it would be mitigated by putting cameras in police cars. And we met in February, March. I met with each of you individually, and you were very sympathetic, and you said you'd look at it. And I came a couple meetings ago, and Ms. Stoker, you just got to say, well, bureaucracy, it takes time. Well, I'm disappointed. And A guy like me, I can't do much, but it is election time. So I did some research, and I wanted to discuss the issue of words versus deeds, because it's very important to me. Point number one, Westchester's doing just fine. Mr. Wong, I've heard you say that a number of times. In terms of deeds, since 2009, in terms of looking at businesses, our business building permits are down about 85% since 2009. We're languishing. Point number two, in terms of our words, y'all are fiscally conservative. Ms. Stoker, you even have that in bold print on your sign. But in terms of deeds, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier, in 2011 we spent over $550,000 in legal bills. 2012, 2013, I'm not really sure. There was a period when it wasn't being discussed openly. We had over $400,000 of overtime in 2012 amongst the township employees. In this economy, we couldn't have found a way to manage that better. And lastly, again, in terms of looking at things, approximately 40% of our township employees, when you look at fully loaded compensation, earn in aggregate total compensation in excess of $100,000 a year. The note I have here is wow. Point number three, and my final point, is transparency. It's something that if I look at the website, I'll see it in your mission statement. Transparency.
You can come back during our second citizens comment.
Thank you very much.
And finish up. Thank you, Chip.
Okay, Mr. Carl Roman, 2 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Carl Ruhlman, 8285 Rental Drive. First of all, we anticipate your disclosing for the record the total of legal expenses for the calendar year 2012 and the total legal expense through August of this year. Since your disclosure is likely to come during the trustee comments portion of the meeting, after the opportunity for citizens to make comments, I should like to ask now that all legal expenses be reported, not just to vendor number 273. Do the figures furnished to me privately after the last meeting, over $503,000 for 2012 and over $271,000 in 2013 through August, do they include all the expenditures pertaining to lawsuits and related costs during the same periods? If not, what are they? And do they include the monthly retainer of $6,000 called for in your contract with the vendor? I see that a charge for legal services of $38,216, etc. for the month of August 2013 finally appears on the agenda this evening for items greater than $2,500. Does this figure include the monthly retainer? Are there separate legal expenses not included, such as lawsuit costs? I do note that on the information handed me after the meeting on October 8th, that legal expenses for August 2013 were shown as $69,463.13, not the $38,216 listed on tonight's agenda for August legal services, a difference of over $30,000. I would certainly expect, on behalf of our citizens, much more transparency, accuracy, and accountability. When citizens ask for facts, they should be given complete and accurately. You as trustees are responsible for transparency and making sure reports given to the public are accurate and complete. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Mrs. Boydell, action item. Item A. I will entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes, September 24th, 2013.
I apologize. I haven't had a chance to do minutes for September 24th. Can we wait till next week meetings?
I don't have a problem. This will just be the second meeting we tabled this set of minutes. You asked to table this 2 weeks ago.
Well,
I understand we get busy. I don't have a problem with it.
That's
it's
no problem.
not busy. I've had some severe health issues in the family.
I understand.
Just took my
Yep. No, I have no problem with that request.
Thank you.
That's no problem. Item B, I will entertain a motion to approve payment of bills.
Also move.
I'll second it.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, requisitions greater than $2,500.
Item 1, administration, $38,216.17 to Frost Brown Todd LLC. These are legal services through August 31st, 2013. Item 2, administration, $29,200 to the Butler County Sheriff's Office. These are for payment of fees, maintenance fees for radios and dispatch consoles for part of the county's 800 megahertz radio system. This is done by formula and is an obligation that we must pay the Butler County Sheriff's Office for our participation in the radio system. Item 3, fire, $2,729.55 to Clark Power Service Incorporated. This is to replace an electronic control module on vehicle number 797 of Quint 75. Item 5, $2,658 to John Zuban Spring Services to replace broken rear leaf springs on vehicle 797 Quint 75. These were two different repairs of two different industry expertise, and so that's why there are two different vendors for this particular piece of equipment. Item 5, $2,566.20 to Ziegler Tire, and this is to replace 4 worn rear tires on vehicle number 311 Quint 73. Item 6, police, $23,100 to Mobile Tech Consulting LLC, and this is to purchase 5 mobile computer terminals that are part of the police cruisers. We will be able to recognize part of a 2010 JAG grant, which will be in the reimbursable amount of $13,092. And item 7, $3,644.90 to Cincinnati Guns and Ammo, and this is to purchase 5 ballistic shields and ancillary attachments. Item 8, services, $25,000 to a blanket purchase order for snowplow contractors, and this is to subcontract for cul-de-sac snow removal for the 2013-2014 winter season.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion for item 1 through 8.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Item D, item 9.
As part of our snowplow treatment personnel fleet, we do have a position called on-call snowplow operators, and these are hired on an as-needed basis when the demand is necessary. The complement is hired, but we call them on on-call purposes on an as-needed basis should our workforce be extended beyond what is reasonably safe and reasonably permitted by law. We can call upon these CDL licensed operators to be complement to our fleet. So we are requesting, as we have in previous years, for the board to approve a complement of 13 on-call snowplow operators and hire on an as-needed basis, in some instances retroactively, for the 2013-2014 winter season.
I will entertain a motion for item 9.
I move that we approve item 9.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Item 10.
There are 2 properties for the board's considerations to declare as public nuisances: 5545 Jugwood Court and 9497 Twin Valley Court. There is a sample motion on page 2 of your memorandum.
I will entertain a motion for item 10.
I'll make the motion that after having reviewed the staff reports and affidavits, I move that we declare the properties listed on the Westchester Township Board of Trustees meeting agenda dated October 22nd, 2013 to be public nuisances as authorized by the Ohio Revised Code. Staff is directed to cause removal of the nuisances identified and monitor the properties for 90 days to require continued compliance. An administrative charge of 25% shall be added to the contractor fee for the properties.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Item 11.
As ordered by the courts, the police department is requesting a motion to dispose of 2 abandoned vehicles by auction or through a salvage dealer. The abandoned vehicles are listed on your memorandum and are determined to be in fair to poor condition, but as I said, has been ordered by the courts to be disposed of by auction or through salvage dealer.
I will entertain a motion for item 11.
Also moved.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
If anybody's interested, there's a 2003 BMW Z4, allegedly in poor condition, but you never know.
Savage for parts. Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Item 12.
Motion not to object to a new liquor permit for Asian Treasure Restaurant Incorporated doing business as Taiyoi Asian Diner at 8179 Princeton Glendale Road, Suite K.
I will entertain a motion for item 12.
I'll make the motion that we not object.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Item 13.
We have for the board's consideration a statutory resolution, number 19-2013, and this is to consider granting a perpetual non-exclusive easement to Duke Energy, Ohio Incorporated, for electric purposes on township property located at 9100 Rialto Road. The board may recall, I believe it was last year, maybe the prior year, we had purchased something we refer to as the Mingus property, which is on Rialto Road, south of the Duke Energy substation, and part of the large commercial development area. As you may recall, we purchased that property with Clean Ohio PWC grant monies, where we were fully reimbursed for the cost of that purchase. And the purpose of seeking the property was to not only assist in some flood management of the creek that's adjacent to this Mingus property, which would then effectuate more effectively lack of flooding on Rialto Road, and that's a common road we had to close previously, but also to assist in the commercial development where potentially this property could be a land bank of flood or drainage properties so that other properties could become more developable. I'm pleased to announce that we have been monitoring that property during the most recent rains, and since we've purchased it and had improved it to accept water from the creek runover, and we have not had to close Rialto Road since that purchase. So at least from a performance measurement, there is one element that we have achieved with our goal. So with that, Duke Energy, as part of their redundancy and to provide electric service to that general commercial area, they are requesting an easement, or I should say an additional easement, because there's currently an easement that runs as part of the transmission towers, but they are requesting this additional easement so that they can erect an additional pole that would allow some looping of the electric wires for redundancy purposes to that commercial area. So as a part of the obligation of the Ohio Revised Code, we do need to, this is considered a conveyance, and we do need to approve by statutory resolution granting a perpetual non-exclusive easement to Duke Energy Ohio Incorporated for electric purposes on township property located at 9100 Rialto Road, and authorizing township administrator to make non-substantive changes with law director approval, to execute said easement and all necessary documents, and to take other actions as necessary to carry out this resolution.
I will entertain a motion for item 13.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion we approve item 13.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay. Second block of citizens' comment.
Chip had chapter 2.
Yes.
When we last again, my name's Chip DeMoy. I live at 5906 Hazeltine Court, and I appreciate the chance to finish my thoughts from the initial 2 minutes. Basically, it's an issue of words versus deeds, and encouraging you all or whoever sits in this chair after November to, focus on the opportunity that really you have to be in the position that you're in. We talked about corporate building permits being down 85%. We've talked about fiscal conservatism in spite of the legal bills, the overtime, and even though the economy's doing bad, the pay just keeps on going up and up and up and up every year. The third point and final point that I had for y'all is, in terms of words, in your mission statement, you use the word transparency. You're very proud of the transparency issue. But in deeds, we've had challenges with that. And I know that you've addressed some of it tonight with the legal bills and sharing the legal bills that have been hidden in executive session for so long. We had an issue with the Win Place or Show police victim settlement of $260,000 being done quietly in executive session. And
would you repeat that? I must have
certainly. The Win Place or Show police, the victim settlement of $260,000.
Thank you.
That was discussed in executive session, I believe, before it came out later. The legal bills you guys have turned around on and you've exhibited tonight, congratulations for that. And the last point is, oversight, checks and balances. I've gotten to know this fellow closest to me here, Mr. Jones. I understand that he's only one fiscal officer of 1,300 townships that doesn't participate in your executive session. Money's tight, times are hard. I would encourage you, or whoever sits in your chair after November, to take a hard look at solutions. I got energized to come up here because of my issue around trying to find money for police cars, for the cameras in police cars. I even offered to work for free to suggest places to find it. I don't do that very often. I think there's, just with what the couple items I mentioned, there's over $1 million of items that could be evaluated, and I would respectfully request that you do that. Use that sharp pencil, give it that look. Let your fiscal officer do a variance analysis of planned spending versus actual spending, and have this man challenge you. That's what he's there for. And I think as a result, you'll all be better, we'll be better, and really at the end of the day, that's why you're here. And just to finish, I want to say thank you very much for you guys taking the time to listen to guys like me. And regardless of what happens in November, I think you guys have done a serviceable job. I appreciate the fact that you have taken the time and the energy out of your lives to do the work you're doing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Carl Ruhlman, 8285 Vendel Drive. Mr. Demois has mentioned several items. And I have mentioned several items over the months. You like to talk about how things are going very well, being one of the top 100 places to live, and even state that you are for little bureaucracy with limited regulations. And we have millions of dollars in investment in commercial and industrial buildings. But in all this, you seem to omit giving credit to the many risk takers, investors, donors, citizens, and indeed township staff and employees, all of whose time, financing, and effort actually made it all happen. Now I want to recap some of the many issues that I and others have discussed. There are very many that the township trustees could have made better choices. The crosswalk, the bike path, the obvious lack of transparency, your support of excessive zoning restrictions. I'm not going to read all on my list, but there's one question that I asked in the past that never got answered. And that question is, which is more important, your rules or the people you serve? I'd like an answer. So if operations are so efficiently handled with all your experience, why are there all these issues out there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Is there anyone else? Calling once, calling twice. Oh.
I'm Bruce Jones. I live at 5685 McCarthy Court, and I'm proud and honored to be your fiscal officer. I have some comments, and I'll resume them from my seat. That was an option, I think, originally presented by Mrs. Boyko, that she thought it more appropriate, perhaps, that the fiscal officer would comment from his seat as opposed to here. My response was that I felt most comfortable speaking from here That's where I have been accustomed to speaking as a citizen. And it's with that in mind, I can't help but notice the change. This lectern has always been facing what you might term neutral, giving equal attention to the residents. And now they appear to be short-shrifted. And with that in mind, let's get it right. Until such time that you could produce a receipt for this. Otherwise, they're the ones that paid for it. Excuse me. In the past, there were comments by Mrs. Stoker, the nature of which has been made a number of times, most significantly in the past 2 weeks, though not exclusively. And I felt it was important to address them, as it's my personal belief, if you don't respond to a falsehood or a misstatement, people just assume it's true. Everybody who sat in these past 2 meetings heard all of these comments. So it is, I submit the following for inclusion in the official record of this meeting, correcting some of these false statements. I'm looking at just a few statements from the past 2 meetings in the interest of time, but also in the interest of good government. Mrs. Stoker has repeatedly said that all our township expenses over $2,500 are subject to approval at these trustee meetings in public. The truth is, as discovered 2 meetings ago through citizen concern for transparency or lack thereof, all legal fees amounting to tens of thousands of dollars at a time have been removed from our agendas as of July of last year. They also discovered that then legal bills were removed with the knowledge and consent of Mrs. Stoker and Mr. Wong. Mr. Lang stated, without objection from either Mr. Wong or Mrs. Stoker, that he was opposed to the new practice of removing legal bills from public approval. With respect to that meeting 2 meetings ago, September 24th, the administrator said regarding removing the legal fees from the agenda, certainly if the board has a change of position and would no longer like to do that, we certainly can revisit and bring those back on as agenda items. To her suggestion, Mr. Wong did not respond. To her suggestion, Mrs. Stoker said neither yes or no, but, quote, be that as it may, they're all open to public perusal, unquote, adding, and here's false statement number 2, quote, and there are no votes going on in executive session, much less any votes to pay anything, unquote. The fact is, there never was public discussion here in this forum to change the long-standing practice of publicly approving all legal bills. Unless Mrs. Stoker and Mr. Wong would tell us that they privately agreed to this change in practice, an obvious violation of sunshine laws, there is only one possibility left. They agreed, voted for this change in executive session. Their own public discussion the past 2 meetings make it obvious the vote was 2-1. The fact is, contrary to Mrs. Stoker's assertion, she and Mr. Wong did vote in executive session, and they did vote to pay legal bills in this new manner. There is no room for any other interpretation, and no one, not 1,000 words, can put a different spin on this immutable fact, unless a decision is somehow not a vote. It is a vote, and we all can count to 2. False statement number 3. Mrs. Stoker stated, quote, all our records are open to the public all the time. There's nothing being hidden. Certainly not legal bills, unquote. Aside from my preceding factual observations and my knowledge of a citizen having his request for legal bills virtually redacted into oblivion, I ask you to consider the likelihood nothing is being hidden from you when this duly elected fiscal officer has documentation of having been denied access to multiple township files, including the township finance drive. Here it is, right here. So, what's the likelihood information is going to be hidden from you? There's either a transparency crisis in this township or a desperate need for a significantly higher standard. Brings to mind the adage, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Just count to 2. My having been denied access was attributed to several subordinate employees, and that reminds me of the explanation given at the last meeting, an attempt to explain away why the legal bills were removed from the agenda. A subordinate was attributed with having a concern about the legal bills, and he, quote, wanted to make sure those bills are addressed timely and expedited and the vendor not have to wait. What? That's why they were removed from the agenda? That's not reasonable because there's no reason. They could say that about all of our bills. We don't want the vendor to have to wait. We don't want any of our vendors to have to wait, so we're no longer going to publicly approve expenditures. And don't chalk the legal bills up as recurring expenses, thus not legally requiring public approval. The $6,000 a month recurring monthly retainer is the only recurring quality. Otherwise, the legal bills vary wildly. So, where's the accountability? Where's the oversight? Where's the transparency? To simply change the practice at the last meeting publicly when it was originally changed privately, and to be so dismissive of this violation of the public trust as to say, as Mrs. Stoker said at the last meeting, quote, didn't seem to float well, so let's put them back on, unquote. There's no contrition. It sounds like we did nothing wrong. And you know, there's something in me that asks, will this change revert back after the election when the accountability season is over? I don't know. Consequently, there must be a systemic change. As fiscal officer, I'll do what I can legally do. Our system for processing purchase orders entails the long-standing practice of auto-processing the purchase orders. As was the practice with Pat Williams, my signature is automatically applied to the purchase orders for purposes of expediency, given the multiple locations for our operations in the township. Ohio statute requires that the purchase orders are signed by the fiscal officer, not to approve them, absolutely not, but to certify that the township has the funds to pay the obligation. And that, in Westchester, is a very safe assumption. However, with respect to citizens' concern for transparency in the township, this administration is hereby notified that the auto-processing purchase orders for legal bills will no longer be in effect. Rather, hereafter, the purchase orders and statement for legal fees are to be emailed to me, whereupon I'll address them. As a result, if the legal bills should mysteriously once again disappear from the public meeting agendas after the election, citizens can obtain a copy of the statements direct from me. This new practice is being implemented until further notice, and I'm implementing it in the interest of transparency. It's wholly inadequate to simply tell our constituency that their action was legal, though it may be a grave failing of discretion and a violation of public trust. In fact, the law requires trustees and fiscal officers to attend public records training at least every 2 years. However, the law permits the trustees or the fiscal officer to send in a subordinate, a surrogate, somebody else to take their place for the training. Bad public policy. Legal, but very bad government. I personally attend because of the value realized in the training, and it's just smart. I understand you have a subordinate to attend. I would suggest you personally attend so you can learn what the problem is and why people have these concerns. I advise you three to remember that your fiduciary responsibility is to the citizens, and that responsibility should be conducted in the light of day whenever possible. And it clearly was with respect to legal bills. Mr. Wong?
Thank you. Anyone else? Only once, only twice. Ms. Boyko, do you have any update? Discussion items and trustee comments.
I was going to hope during Mrs. Boyko's discussions, if she could address the issue of whether or not we're voting in executive session and the background behind why we put it back. There was no vote in executive session. Mrs. Boyko, we discussed it here in the meeting. I don't know why you said Catherine Stoker didn't respond. And as to whether or not our records are open, the person legally responsible for keeping all township records and the person legally responsible for producing whatever township records are asked to be reviewed is our fiscal officer, Mr. Bruce Jones.
No, it's not true.
Denied access.
Now, you had a number of things you wanted to...
Well, based on the board's direction from the last meeting, it was my understanding that you wanted me to respond to the citizen request to read for the record the legal payments month by month for 2012 and from January 2013 through August 2013.
That's fine.
That's fine.
My understanding. So what I just want to start with a couple of comments, because I think one of the citizens' comments referred to the information that was presented and shared previously with him at his request has a discrepancy from what was paid in August of 2013 to what's on the agenda. I think it's important to note that what was presented and what I will present this evening are the total monthly payments made to Frost Brown Todd. What's on the agenda may be one invoice. We may get 2 invoices a month, and so we may be paid at different times. But what we are presenting to them is the total monthly payments to Frost Brown Todd. And these total monthly payments include the retainer, the $6,000 monthly retainer. We have a contract with Frost Brown Todd, really that's two-pronged. One is that we have hired Don Crane as the township's law director, which as a limited home rule township, you are required to have a law director. And so part of that contract provides those services, and that is for what the retainer pays. The $6,000 a month is for contracting with Frost Brown Todd through Don Crane through Frost Brown Todd as our law director. The additional invoices or additional fees charged to the township from Frost Brown Todd include the attorney services, the legal services that they provide in advising in a whole range of issues and matters, anywhere from contract negotiations to contract review of this easement language that Duke Energy has requested that we provide an easement, information on any particular development project, anything that goes from day-to-day operations of the township. We rely on those legal services of Frost Brown Todd. So and those services may also include attorney fees and also some of their clerical support fees, anything that is encumbered through work and charges to Frost Brown Todd. Obviously, they are then charged to the township for that. So what I'm going to read are the monthly payments that the township has paid to Frost Brown Todd, inclusive of the retainer, inclusive of all of the lawsuits that have been outstanding, or any other legal service that is provided by Frost Brown, and then obviously paid by the township. So the monthly payments do not correspond necessarily directly to one agenda, because these are monthly, and those might be portions of month or a month and some additional previous months. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So So two things. The monthly payments, again, are inclusive of all Frost Brown Todd invoices, bills, retainer, and the lawsuits are included in this, and in these charges as well. So for January of 2012, $48,800.14. February 2012, $59,517.79. I do have copies, so if anyone from the public would like to obtain one, we can provide that to them as well. March 2012, $56,092.63. April 2012, $6,000. May 2012, $70,792.69. June 2012, $6,000. July 2012, $66,000.24. August 2012, $60,064.78. September 2012, $23,062.40. October 2012, $33,369.97. November 2012, $33,850.01. December 2012, $40,187.65. January of 2013, $40,854.32. February 2013, $6,000. March 2013, $39,866.51. April 2013, $55,072.10. May 2013, $6,000. June 2013, $25,872.79. July 2013, $28,330.59. And August 2013, $69,463.13. I just want to make sure. I know there was a couple other items that the resident had requested.
Could you repeat that last one, Judy? I apologize.
For August of 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
$69,463.13.
And the reason that's different from what we have tonight on the agenda is because to balance the difference between the $69,000 and the $38,000 would have been on the first meeting agenda.
Potentially, or part of a meeting in July?
Well, it would have probably been on the October 8th.
Well, it depends on when the invoices come and how they're presented to us. We try to get them on the agenda as soon as they're reconciled. We will get them on the agenda. Previously we got them on the agendas as soon as we possibly could, and the way the bills are invoiced, the charges are invoiced versus the way they're then processed through reconciliation by our staff, because we check the bills just to make sure that the charges and the services are correct, does not always overlap into the 31 calendar days of any particular month. And so it's we can reconcile them, and we have them reconciled from agenda to month, but until you see that math, you can't just assume that a monthly payment relates to 2 trustee meetings a month. So, so I think that was. I believe that was that particular item.
Mr. Lane, do you have any comments?
No, just November 5th is voting day. Everybody remember to vote?
Yeah, a couple of issues have come up both tonight and over the last couple of weeks since the last meeting. One is Mr. Jones' assertion that we must have had a vote in executive session to put the legal bills back on the agenda. Mrs. Boyko,
excuse me, it was to take them off.
Okay. Mrs. Boyko, was there, anybody on the board, was there a vote in the executive session to take, no. You know, not all decisions are handled here in the township meeting. If there's an issue that the township administrator wants to get some impact and feedback rather than wait 2 to 3 weeks to have it discussed, she'll call me up, she'll call you up, She'll call you up and say, okay, this is the issue I'm dealing with, That does not mean anybody's hiding anything, does not mean we are violating the Sunshine Law. It just means she, in order to be prepared for the next meeting expeditiously, is asked us individually if there is some project we want to work on, or if there is some issue that should be on the agenda that hasn't been discussed before, hasn't been brought up in the previous meeting. Is that a fair thing to say? Am I misstating?
Yeah, I don't recall us ever voting on that in executive session, but consequently, nor do I ever recall us discussing it in a public meeting. It was just private conversations we had with Judy, and the decision was made. We never discussed it publicly.
Maybe you weren't at the meeting when it was brought up and discussed, and both Lee and I turned to Mrs. Boyko and said, Mrs. Boyko, well, let's put them back on.
Oh, no.
No. I mean when we took them off.
Yeah, that's...
When we took them off the meeting, off back in July of last year. We never had a public discussion to take them off. Consequently, we never discussed it in executive session to take them off either.
The other thing, there have been a few other items that have come up repeatedly over the last couple of weeks, and in like the forums. I would like to mention, one is this confusion of whether or not the township participates in aggregation. I apologize, I keep trying to say aggravation. I have heard you repeatedly say that the township does not participate in aggregation, and so I was hoping that Mrs. Boyko could explain.
Yeah, let me clarify my statement. There were times the township pulled out of aggregation because we were able to get a better deal in the free market than we got from aggregation.
Could you maybe clarify that? Because I think there's a misunderstanding from what Mr. Lang has said.
I think you're both right. All of the township's buildings and facilities participate in the natural gas aggregation program, and we have participated in the natural gas aggregation program since its inception. Regarding electric supply, when the electric supply market became more competitive, which was basically around 2009, the township did contract with Duke Energy Retail Services around November of 2009, if my memory serves me correctly. And at that time, there was no electric aggregation program in the township, and so we didn't really have any other opportunity other than contracting on our own, all of our township buildings, all of our township facilities, with a separate provider. And so in November of 2009, we did contract with DERS. The township electric program was not created until, and was not offered as an electric supplier until May of 2010. And our contract with DERS ran through, I believe it was 2012 or 2011. Don't hold me on those dates. But each time that our contract had expired with DERS and an electric aggregation program was being offered at a certain rate, we did compete that. And I always compete those rates. To date, as Trustee Lang said, we have been able to, as an owner of multiple buildings and multiple facilities, and as a vast consumer of that electric service, we have been on our own been able to compete a more competitive price than an individual homeowner in the electric aggregation program. So yes, we do not participate in the electric aggregation program. And I guess I was thinking about this, as that's been discussed many times. Is like, so the board can criticize me for either not participating in the electric aggregation program, or for competing as a consumer like everyone else can.
I applaud you for saving the taxpayers' money.
To save taxpayers' money. And again, as a property owner of multiple buildings and multiple facilities, we have some economies of scale that we can compete on our own for a better price than any independent homeowner or independent business owner could. And I, hopefully, with the approval of the board, have elected to do that and have received lower quotes through those prices.
The only thing I would take objection is the individual homeowners do have the opportunity to shop. We've shopped. We found a better price for both gas and electric than we could get through the aggregation program. So even the individual has the opportunity to shop.
It's the opportunity. Yeah. They don't have the economies of scale that we do in terms of volume of use and supply.
One of the most important advantages, I think, for the whole aggregation experience is that I think it has helped open up a whole market for everybody, whether it's residents, businesses, anybody. Because of, I believe, the aggregation program, Duke itself was forced to sharpen its pencils and cut its profit in order to provide the most attractive market rate possible. And other energy suppliers came into our area and marketed their suppliers. And I thought it was wonderful. I think the market was actually at work, and I think everybody benefited by that.
So it's free market.
And I don't think it would have happened without the aggregation. I really don't.
That's correct.
Now, there were some other things also on, Chip DeMoy mentioned this on permits down from 2009. 2009, we were still rocking on the biggest commercial expansion ever seen in our region. And it is lower now, but it's still higher than anybody else's. If you look at the economic development page on the township's website, I counted over 70 new businesses and or new business expansions going on here, bringing in literally thousands of jobs. I think that in spite of an awful lot of economic roller coastering, Westchester has, through careful management, managed to stay in a good place financially, both for the residents and for the businesses here. As respects $400,000 in overtime, we don't make widgets to sell at Walmart. We are in the business of providing emergency services around the clock, 24/7, no matter what's going on. When we're in the middle of a blizzard, we don't park all the snow plows at 5 o'clock. We snow and we salt and we plow until the roads are clear. That means overtime. If we're having a flu epidemic and some of our firefighters or police officers or road crew are down, somebody else has to step in. Overtime goes up. We had a firefighter lieutenant who was suffered an injury that caused him to be off work for several months. When that happens, his responsibilities have to be covered. Overtime goes up. I personally don't think if someone's house is on fire, they would want the fire department to arrive, notice it's the end of the shift, roll up all their hoses and go home. That's not the nature of the business we provide. We are providing those essential services which preserve lives and property. And that means sometimes we'll have overtime. Now, the clear way of preventing overtime would be to say reduce services, which I find unacceptable. Or we could hire more people. I think that's not cost effective. What we have tried to do is use overtime as one of the many things when we are reviewing the operations in our departments. We look at what kind of overtime is going on. If it seems to be going up, why? Is it because somebody's injured but they're going to be back next month? That's not an issue. I think that demands we take action. But perhaps it might mean that we need a little more technology. Maybe we need more training. Maybe we need to reorganize what we're thinking. So to me, overtime is something you look at, you're concerned about, but when we are providing emergency services, like I say, that people's lives depend on, we are going to have overtime from time to time, and I don't think our constituents would want it any other way. With respect to employees who have a combined salary and benefit package in excess of $100,000, we have quite a few. I believe all our department heads are included in that. And incidentally, our department heads are part of our non-contract employees who have no cost of living increases. I don't think Judy's had a cost of living increase any increase since 2009,
It's
maybe?
5 years.
Where we have more of the people who make a package in excess of $100,000 are typically our firefighters and police officers. And the reason they do that is, quite frankly, because they're unionized. And the unions have the ability to say, look, these are the comparable rates in our area, and if you don't offer us something comparable, they have the legal right to call in an arbitrator. An arbitrator comes in. I think we have an opportunity there to maybe have a much worse situation than what we believe we can negotiate. So in the case of our police and fire departments, we are offering what I think is a comparable to our surrounding communities. Sometimes we're a little on the top. Sometimes there's a couple of communities offering more than we do, but we do stay in the top third pretty consistently. And I think we have to in order to keep good people. With respect to cameras, that is something we have considered. The biggest problem that I see going forward with the cameras is not the equipment itself. I don't think it would be any stretch at all to find grants or to find sponsors to get the equipment. The problem is we'll probably need at least another person, a part-time person, if not full-time, to handle the additional requests for the records, for copies of the cameras. Because now every time somebody's stopped for speeding or stopped for maybe a suspicion of operating under the influence, they're going to want a copy of that camera, by golly, and so's their attorney, and so's the defense attorney and the prosecuting attorney. And next thing you know, we're going to need probably at least a part-time person, if not a full-time person. Right now, we are doing everything we can to keep costs in our police departments and in our fire departments down so that we can meet our promise to our constituents that we will not go back on for another levy before the 5 years are out from the last levy we went out for in police. What was that, 2009? And that's a tough squeeze to do. But it is something we're looking at, and it's something I think most of us are probably have a positive attitude towards. The problem is trying to work it into the budget that the taxpayer gave us for the operation of our police services. Let's see now, what are some of the other issues raised? Regarding rules of the people, let me just say rules are designed from my perspective to protect people. I don't think there's a conflict there. I don't know where Mr. Jones believes that Mr. Wong and I did not express a positive opinion of having our legal bills back on the agenda. It didn't take a vote because all Mrs. Boyko needed to know was what was the sense of the board. We gave her the sense was that we felt they should be back on the agenda. Let's see. Oh, another issue which has come up frequently, and no matter how often we discuss it, it comes up over and over. That is what some people see as funds coming from property taxes paid on the east side, east of 75, being spent on the west of 75. And they point to the infrastructure built along Union Center Boulevard. And I think a lot of people aren't aware, I know Mr. Lang is very aware of this, that the Union Center interchange, the Union Center Boulevard, were built entirely by the property owners in the Union Center corridor. They donated about $7 million of right-of-way. ODOT gave us their proportionate right-of-way. The property owners in that corridor accepted a very hefty special benefit assessment on themselves to pay for the construction. When that road was constructed, the township stepped in, administered the loans, used the township and the county's borrowing authority to take that money guaranteed by the property owners, borrow the money necessary to build the Union Center Boulevard interchange and the Union Center Boulevard. Once those went in, then we started the really astonishing amount of commercial development we've seen. The Marriott came in, what were then called the Walsh-Higgin office towers came in. With that new development, then, the payments in lieu of taxes, the TIF money started coming into the Union Center Boulevard TIF. That funding, again, which came from the property owners in the Union Center Boulevard corridor, which also comprised the Union Center Boulevard TIF, that money was then used to build a new police headquarters, new fire department, new library, other amenities which are important to the entire community. At no time was general fund money spent. That was TIF money that was spent to do that. I think all of us, now that ODOT has finished working on the Route 42 and spiffed up Route 42 so we have all new curbs, all new uniform mailboxes. I think it looks very nice, frankly. I think it's time that we sit down again and start working with Route 42 and start finding ways to make the improvements there they want. Now, in 2001, after we had gotten the Union Center Boulevard established, it was beginning to grow, the Township Trustees put together a plan, I think spearheaded by Jose Alvarez, one of our previous trustees, to bring improvements to Route 42, nicer sidewalks, light fixtures, some landscaping. And we presented it, the township presented it to the property owners along Route 42, and quite frankly, they disliked it. So we said, that's fine, we still want to help you. Come to us with a plan, because we want to understand what it is that you want, because we want to help you see your vision accomplished there on Route 42. So it took them a little while, but I think it was 2009 or 10. They came to us with a plan they liked. It contained several dozen different improvements they'd like to see. And we said, fine, that sounds good, let's get started. But these property owners, unlike the Union Center Boulevard property owners, were not interested in paying for the costs themselves. They wanted the township to. We said, okay. We can do that if we do it a step at a time. So we said, we need to have you take these dozens of improvements you'd like to see, prioritize them for us, and we will appropriate money and then start tackling it a section at a time. And we'll get this done over a series of years. Unfortunately, the property owners were not able to agree on a list of priorities. They ended up disbanding. The Township Trustees, however, didn't give up. We worked with ODOT, staff in particular, Mrs. Boyko, to make sure as they put their improvements in on 42 that they straightened out and realigned the Butler-Warren intersection. They realigned the Dimmick Road section, making them safer and more convenient for the people passing through those areas. We tried to get ODOT to commit to putting in sidewalks. They didn't want to do that, but they did commit to allowing us to put sidewalks in there right away, should we choose to, at our expense, not theirs. We appropriated over $200,000 and tried to put in a set of sidewalks on Dimmick Road to attach Dimmick to the new 42 going in. Unfortunately, the property owners along Dimmick that would have been affected by the bike lane, they called it a bike lane or a sidewalk, whatever, decided they didn't want it. So we didn't do it. We are still ready, I believe, and I believe now that ODOT is finished with 42, it's time for us to reach out again, because I think there are things that could be done that would meet the needs and wants of the property owners along there. It's an excellent route. It's different from Union Center Boulevard, but it has its own charm and its own advantages there. And I think it's time for us to redouble our efforts to reach out to them and, again, make an effort to come up with a list of prioritized improvements they'd like to have done. So I'm hoping the rest of the board will join with me in that reach-out effort.
Thank you, Mrs. Stoker. You hit a lot of points here. I just want a couple of points here. In the last Economic Development Council meeting, I learned that 95% of our warehouse and industrial space been occupied, leased out. That is wonderful news. And also another point is the state auditor's award that with distinction that tells us that our reporting is transparent and fiscally responsible. This is a third consecutive time. So, Mr. Jones, I know that we are not a perfect union, but Township remains strong, and we will remain strong. Thank you.
I would like to add a couple comments.
Well, you get your opportunity already.
Lee, this is trustee comments. You can't.
He's
You
joking
can't
with
limit
you.
trustee comments.
George.
No, that was uncalled for, Kathy.
George, he's joking.
I'll work on it. That was just uncalled for. The award we get is for reporting on our CAPRA. It has nothing at all to do with transparency. Nothing at all to do with transparency. It's a financial reporting award, not a transparency award. And Kathy, the only thing I would say, you're absolutely right. When we have emergency needs, we need to keep our people on fire, obviously. But there are uses of our people that are, in my opinion, not in the best interest of the township. And I think there's some things that we need to look at next year as it regards that.
We can always improve. There's no such thing as perfection.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for improvement.
Anything else? Anything else?
I can't see, except that Tuesday's coming November 5th is a time for all of us to celebrate our inalienable right to vote. So I certainly hope everybody will get out and do so if they haven't done so already.
Okay. Township is doing great. We're just trying to make it better.
Yes, we are.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and go into executive session with legal counsel for the purpose of considering and discussing 1. Personnel matters. A. Discuss contract negotiation for a certain collective bargaining unit. B. Review provisions of benefits for non-contract and contract employees. 2. Acquisition, sales, or swap of real property. 3. Current and pending litigation. The board will not return.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.